So on Thursday night, Andre Ward announced his retirement at 33 years old, undefeated, and as the light heavyweight champion. He retired because he had no desire. He said he has no desire to fight anymore, and that the lead up to fights was taking too much of a toll on his body, and that he just didn't think he can do it anymore. Was it the right time for him to retire?
Hello, and thank you for having me on the show, the Championship Rounds. It's your boy JN, the new co-host. But yeah, Andre Ward, pound for pound number one, America's last Olympic gold medalist, has announced his retirement. Will it be premature? I'm not so sure. I believe him when he says that he can't give everything in his fights. If you look back, he was knocked down in one of his last fights against Sergei Kovalev. I think that the move up through weight divisions will be very tough for any athlete. You just got to look at what happened to Roy Jones. What's also interesting is that ESPN's Dan Raphael reported that Andre Ward had signed a 4-fight deal after his contract had ended with HBO, and that of the four fights, that of the four fights, one of them was at least one of them was scheduled to be at heavyweight. So I feel like it's a decision which has sort of been prompted by the lack of options which he has. I mean, if you think about it, he could fight Sergei Kovalev again, but I'm not sure he'd do great numbers. I don't feel like Adonis Stevenson does big numbers in the light heavyweight division either. And then the move up to cruiserweight, the real big payday which he would have in that division would be Tony Bellew, but Tony Bellew has come out that he'll be fighting David Haye.
So a lot of fighters have come out since talking about all the respect they have for Andre Ward, what a great champion he is, and that it was nice to see him retire on his own terms, rather than the sport retiring him. Although Sergey Kovalev has come out and said, and I quote, "I said I would stop Andre Ward's career, and I did." Now, I understand there's a lot of beef there. You know, they had two fights. Kovalev thought he got robbed in both of them. But do you respect what he's come out and said, or do you think that he owes someone like Andre Ward a lot more respect?
I feel like when you lose a fight in the nature that Kovalev did, in the first one he definitely has claimed that it was a controversial victory, whereas in the second one I don't think, despite the low blow claims, I don't think that he can hold any sort of grievance about it. I just thought it was an absolute masterclass from Ward. Those body shots, they will be taught in gyms for generations to come. The only thing which I think he could have a claim about was maybe he got stopped too early. But I think the problem that Kovalev has, and one of the reasons why Ward, I feel, will live on for generations, why I think that his legacy will only grow stronger, sort of in like the ilk of Lennox Lewis, is that when he moved up to fight Kovalev, who was the baddest man in the division at the time, that nobody wanted to fight. I mean, it's just shown as Adonis Stevenson avoided him for so long, that his entire reputation was built around this monster. And when someone like Andre Ward, who steps up a division, just tears it down and just completely, rewrites the script and takes like this sort of idea away from Kovalev. Because let's face it, I mean, sometimes he had people beat before they even got into the ring with him.
Yeah.
So I can understand Kovalev's his grievances, but let's be honest. I mean, I feel like he should just be the bigger man and give Ward the credit that he deserves.
Speaking of credit that Andre Ward deserves, Ring Magazine especially said that before he retired, Andre Ward was the pound-for-pound best boxer on the planet. This is ahead of boxers on the list like Gennady Golovkin, Terence Crawford, Vasyl Lomachenko, Rigondeaux, Canelo. Now, do you believe that Andre Ward was the pound-for-pound king? Or do you think maybe someone like Triple G deserved to be? Because Triple G has been in the top 5 pound for pound according to Ring Magazine, for 140 weeks in a row. That's top in the list. Do you think Andre Ward was the pound for pound king?
I do think Andre Ward was the pound for pound king, and I'll tell you why. If you go back to when the Super 6 tournament started back around 2008, and you've just got to look at the resume that he's built up. Carl Froch, Kovalev twice, Arthur Abraham, Chad Dawson, who was the light heavyweight champion at the time. And then other victories as well. Quite an underrated victory, I feel, was one of his ones at light heavyweight against Sullivan Barrera. I don't feel like he's got the credit for that. But yeah, I just feel like whereas Golovkin has the more, I would say, dominant victories, I feel like Ward has the victories, but against a higher caliber of opponent. I mean, if you think about it, he completely cleaned out the super middleweight division at 168. Then he moved up and completely cleaned out the light heavyweight division at 175, barring a victory against Adonis Stevenson. And I couldn't really make a case for anybody else. But obviously, you could have said Roman Gonzalez for a while, but obviously he's lost twice in a row now. So I would have definitely put Ward as pound for pound number one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you spoke about his resume: 32 wins, 16 of those by knockout. Olympic gold medalist at light heavy in 2004. He then went on to win the WBA super middleweight in 2009 against Kessler. He then unified it in 2011, beating Carl Froch in the Super 6 tournament that you briefly touched on there. And then went up to light heavy and won a unanimous decision against Kovalev after, I think it was after quite a long time out due to a shoulder injury, wasn't it? It was upwards of a year, right? Yeah, so honestly, I think it's what maybe once in a generation you get someone really dominate a sport like that and really clean out divisions to the point where there are no options that excite them. Didn't he say before retiring that he was only interested in spectacle fights? That was something he meant, yeah. So based off that mentality, I do think it was the right time to retire. I mean, bar going up and taking on people like Tony Bellew, I don't think there was much left for him to prove. Personally, when I first watched the original fight against Kovalev, I scored it as Kovalev winning the fight, but I'm not a professional boxing judge, so I would have to go off the result, and I think, yeah, I think the Kovalev has just been bitter about the whole thing, and that Andre Ward does deserve that respect, and rightfully as the pound for pound king. Now, one thing about Andre Ward that people loved was the person he was. I don't think he ever had to go out and verbally berate his opponents to sell fights. What do you think made Andre Ward so special as a pay-per-view draw and a fan favourite?
Well, first of all, I feel that it's both a blessing and a curse. The reason why he, in his entire boxing career, has made less than Conor McGregor has, is because he doesn't go out and throw tables and just shout crazy abuse at his opponents. I mean, if you look at the second Sergei Kovalev fight, which was an incredible spectacle from a boxing fan's point of view, and it did less than 200,000 pay-per-view buys. I think it did about 150,000. Which, I mean, if you think about it, and you compare that to the UK, where Carl Froch, George Groves did upwards of, I believe he did upwards of 750,000. Could have even done 1 million. Not sure on that. So yeah, but as a person, he was a devout Christian. Where of course, he just had a great character to him. It was a man of dignity outside the ring, and within the ring, he was a boxing purist's dream. That's why I feel that you could liken his fighting style to that of Joe Calzaghe, whereas the casual, it just doesn't sort of excite the casual fan because he's not, how could I put it, because he just embraces the sweet science. He doesn't, come out in like a Golovkin style and blow his opponents out there. He's very awkward, very slick, and that's why, as a boxing fan, I just appreciated him so much. But I can understand why a casual wouldn't. And I also feel that he also had a lot of dislike within the boxing world for his style. Whereas, and I do feel that as time goes on and people will realize that his legacy will grow on them. Like what he's achieved, I just feel like he's never had the credit for, and I feel like that could have played a part in why he is retired.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was listening to a podcast just earlier today, the Boxing Life podcast with Tony Jeffries, and they were talking about how Andre Ward was such a great amateur boxer, obviously competing in the Olympics, but yeah, he's such a great amateur boxer that he maybe brought that style of winning fights to professional boxing, and maybe wasn't the exciting quote unquote knockout artist that you find some fighters are. But in that, I feel a lot of die-hard boxing fans were drawn to him just because of how skillful he was in the ring, how he would win those rounds on rounds, just on the hours and hours and hours of amateur bouts that he had. Just how skilled as a fighter, as a tactician, as the pure amateur boxer that he was, how good was he?
Well, I think that in my personal opinion, I don't think that he was the best technical boxer on the pound for pound list, but I do think that he was the hardest to beat. The reason why is that he's such an intelligent man, and as soon as he computes what he's up against, the style, the movement, the sort of game plan, then it's just very, very difficult to beat him. I mean, if you watch the first Carl Froch fight, that was just an absolute masterclass. And for one judge to score it, I think it was like 7-5 or something like that, I thought that was an absolute disgrace. I was very disappointed with the scorecard at the time. As far as his fighting style goes, very crafty, very awkward. Obviously, he's had a lot of criticism for the style in which he's been touted to use his head as a weapon. Where these are all things which only a top level boxer will realise that from just years and years of experience that they can get away with these things. So I don't think he was the best technical boxer on the pound for pound list, but he was definitely the most hard to beat.
Yeah, definitely. I think perfectly captures the saying, someone who knows how to win fights. Another thing about Andre Ward, which was really highlighted in that beautiful retirement video, talking about how he how he did it, how he said everything he wanted to do and then went and did it. A great story. He's been boxing all of his life, basically. What do we know about Andre Ward's story, and why is it such a special one?
Well, growing up that he lost his father. What really makes it a sort of unique story is that his godfather, Virgil Hunter, I believe, took him in at at a very young age, and they've worked together ever since. Ever since. They've stayed together through everything. Andre Ward had his first child when he was 17. So it just shows you all the difficulties that he's overcome in his life. And you feel like, when I think of Andre Ward, I think of a proud, proud man. Like, if you look at that Sergei Kovalev fight, the second one, it was just no way that Andre Ward was going to lose, just on pride alone. Whereas you could tell that Sergei Kovalev was looking for a way out. So, yeah, I mean, and then you go through, I'm not actually sure whether it's 12 or 13, but he hasn't lost a fight since then.
Yeah, he was 12, yeah.
Since he was 12. Then obviously becoming the last American to win an Olympic gold medal in 2004. And then winning the Super 6, cleaning out the super middleweight division, and then moving up, all in the midst of having shoulder injuries and promoter difficulties, and combining that with staying with a man of character and dignity outside the ring, and you've got yourself a future Hall of Famer.
That does lead me on to one of my last questions. I was going to say, when we look back on the career of Andre Ward, what will we remember? And you just said a future Hall of Famer. I completely agree with that. Yeah, so look, if all's said and done now, and he is retired, he stays retired, do you think there is anything for him to come back for? Is there anything for him left to prove? Or has he proved to us everything? And yeah, has he reached his maximum potential? Is there anything left to prove? And how do we look back on his career if this is the end of it?
So the one thing that you can tell about Andre Ward, and even said it in his retirement interview with First Take, that he's a man of resolve. So when he says that he's retired, I do truly believe. I don't think this is going to be a Floyd Mayweather where he's going to come back. I truly do believe that this is it. As far as what we'll look back on, I think we'll just look back on someone that was never truly appreciated within the boxing world. A man that should have been a huge pay-per-view star as a role model. He goes around penitentiaries, jails, often gives talks to people that he feels have had an underprivileged start to life. So
I think Andre Ward is that type of man where he's not doing all of these things for publicity. He's not doing all of these things to make himself a better name. He's doing these things because he genuinely wants to make a change. And that's to do with his upbringing. That's to do with his story. I don't think he'll be disappointed with, not becoming the biggest superstar in the world. Do you think he looks back on any of that and thinks, I wish I could have got here, I wish it could have been here? Or do you think he's happy with what he's done and how he's affected people?
I think that when you're an elite athlete like he was, I think you'll always have a mentality that I could have done this or I could have done that, with that sense of nostalgia. But I just really feel that when he sits down and looks over his career, I just don't think there's anything left to prove. If you look at where he is right now and how the last two fights went against Kovalev, where he put absolutely everything into them, I just don't think that there's anything left for him. He talked about moving up in divisions. That's really, at this point in your career, he's 33, where he's had problems with his body, obviously with his shoulder. I just feel like that a lot of fighters just don't know when to stop. They just don't know when to quit.
Yeah, they let the sport retire them.
Look at Anderson Silva, look at Roy Jones Jr. He said something perfect, that I want to retire from the sport and not let the sport retire me.
Exactly.
And he's done that. He's made multi-millions. He's got a great legacy. He retires undefeated. He's a Hall of Famer. And he retires within, I feel like, with everyone's respect. So
I would love to see a lot of young boxers take Andre Ward as a role model, learn from him, and really try and model their approach to boxing the way he did. I think we've got to a point now where maybe a load of professional fighters have seen the success of people like Conor McGregor. He made himself off of trash talking and being so ostentatious with the way he approaches press conferences and opponents, and that did work for him and that sold fights. I feel too many fighters approach fighting thinking, if I act like Conor McGregor, then I'll make those numbers. When really I don't think that is them. I think it's easy to see through a lot of fighters like that, and I really, really like to see the way Andre Ward approached fights, and I hope to see more of that in the future. So Andre Ward, a future Hall of Famer, like you said, a boxing purist's dream, one of the greatest of all time.
As far as the greatest of all time goes, yeah, one of. I'd definitely say so. I think you could put him anywhere in history in that weight category, and I just can't imagine many people beating him. I really can't. I think that his style of fighting is just so difficult to beat. But I feel like to be truly regarded as the best, and I feel like you have to sort of transcend the sport, and I just don't think that he did. But as for his actual fighting style in boxing, then definitely one of the greatest of all time.
Awesome. So that's going to do it for our piece on Andre, Son of God, Ward. Joe, thanks for being on. I really wanted to have you on this one because I've known you a long time. I know you've been a boxing fan probably ever since you can remember, and I can honestly say I've always heard you talk about Andre Ward being one of your favourite fighters every step of the way. You're definitely not bandwagoning on this thing. You've been preaching Andre Ward to me ever since I've known you. So that's exactly why I wanted to have you on, and I hope to have you on again if any topics interest you.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure joining the championship rounds. I look forward to returning, and let's get this season underway. Let's carry on. Let's get some momentum. Please like, subscribe, share, and I'm going to hand you back over to my host.
That's going to do it for this one.